His RPGs, you have mortar rounds over here.
The staff sergeant was telling me that that's about the size of the round that hit me.
That was kind of nerving.
We also went to see the Victory Over America Palace. It was a sight to see.
This is a former Victory Over America Palace. Was part of Saddam's propaganda. He figured that if he was still in power after a conflict, that he was victorious. This palace has 75 bedrooms and bathrooms. It has this ballroom, one right across the hallway that mirrors this one, a fountain in the basement, and a huge ballroom upstairs. This is the grand ballroom. You can see why it's called the grand ballroom, because it is so huge. We actually call it the football room. It is the size of a standard U.S. football field, 100 meters by 55.
Walking around in there was kind of surreal, because at first you're like, is this even, is this gonna fall down? Because, I mean, it got hit by 2 missiles. And there's, a huge hole in the ceiling.
It was bombed when it was being built, so it was not completely finished.
First one, very obviously, right back there. The second one up and to my right. Not quite as much structural damage, but still proves a point.
We got to the embassy, and what a great facility.
Playing at the embassy was really great because they had a lot of people there that were Iraqis listening to our show.
Doctors, authors, painters, accountants, these young professionals are the future of Iraq. And we couldn't show their faces because their faces can't be seen. They risked their lives just aligning themselves with Americans.
When we went out to the U.S. Embassy, my dad was in the same up-armored Suburban that I was in.
We were supposed to fly over where Scott was injured. Instead, we took a vehicle convoy. We had to pass through an area that is not pleasant right now, both during the day and at night.
Does it bother you driving rather than flying?
I'd rather drive out there by ground than by air and see where it all happened. Even though it'll be quick, to the point, put a closure to everything, just to see everything, just to say I've been back there. We passed by where I had gotten wounded. Was it back there? I didn't even...
What?
Route Jackson's back there.
We just passed over it.
People would think that Scott's journey was anticlimactic, but I can tell you it was not. And it took a whole lot for him to get into that vehicle and drive through an area where he had been hit. Make it out and make it back was the goal. Try to put a closure to everything, and I'm pretty sure it did. Very excited, nothing happened this time.
Me too.
They gave them the hero's welcome that they deserve, that all of our troops deserve.
But I wanted to come back and walk out this time on both feet. Yes, and so thank you guys.
If nothing else happened on this trip but those moments, I would do this trip again tomorrow.
We're getting ready to get on a plane and head over to Balad.
Welcome to Sather Air Base, Baghdad, Iraq. It's called the Glass Room, and this is right off the airfield here. We're getting ready to take a flight up to Balad.
Balad was a little different because, it was nicknamed Mortaritaville. There's, very bad things that used to happen there, and obviously still do.
For example, when we were flying into Balad, we had to circle the airstrip for 20 minutes or so because they had received a couple of incoming rounds. So there's, activity still taking place. It's still a hostile environment. There's still soldiers in harm's way.
Welcome to Balad, Joint Base Balad. You'll get a chance to see both the Air Force and Army and a lot of civilians and contractors. So you get a chance to meet and play for those folks tonight. So we're really happy you're here. So the first thing we're gonna do is make you watch about a 3-minute video on what happens if we have an attack.
The very first thing is, when we get to Balad, they pull us in a room and sit us down, and they're like, hey, not to freak you out, but we're gonna play this video in case there's an attack on the base, so you guys know what to do. We're here for a couple days. We fly in, we do our shows, it kind of makes you realize, you know, how serious this really is.
Today we got this great tour of a Predator, which is a remotely controlled airplane.
The airplane itself is a big glider with a small motor, as we can go park over a location and just keep eyes on with our camera for a very long period of time. We do mostly intelligence gathering.
Now, the amazing thing is that they're operated from the United States. They gather intelligence, and they can also carry missiles.
The airplane itself is about $4.2 million, is kind of the advertised cost. The camera is half the price of the plane, so that's about $2 million. That's the most expensive part.
You know, this is fascinating because this is the future of our military warfare, and we got to see it.
One of the things we got to do while we were here was go to the firing range.
It's about the length of a finger.
We got to shoot several things. There were some AKs there. There was an MP5.
We're only going to be firing in the semi-automatic mode.
Okay, that's probably the best thing.
It was funny kind of watching different people shoot. Like Nan was shooting. And...
Oh, but on the back note, I did do very well on the firing range. I hit my mark.
You know, these shows that we do acoustically, they're the most rewarding shows you will do. We talk.
This is my first opportunity to come over here, and I'm 24 years old, and there's a lot of people my age that are just coming over here for the first time in a different capacity, and we just want to let you guys know how much we appreciate your service and everything you do for us.
I want to be a good man. I do like I shouldn't, man. I want to be the kind of man the mirror likes to see.
We got another warrior coming in too. My son, he's over in Kuwait right now. He's on his way over here. I just want to thank everybody. Thanks for inviting us over here, and God bless you all.
Come change me into the man I want to be.
Visiting a hospital in Balad was something else because it's totally different now. When I was there, it was all in a tent.
I think you'll get a lot out of this, seeing the facility, even though it isn't exactly what you went through. The setup, the different areas are the areas that you would have passed through. But what you did was you came in on medevac helicopters. Probably within 10 minutes, you're off the helicopter and into the facility. Heroes Highway was constructed because in the old days, we couldn't handle as many patients. So sometimes when the weather was inclement, people would be waiting outside because the ED was full. We eventually put an American flag under here, so anybody that came under this tent would see that they were in the care of their medical comrades. Thank you very much, Carl. I appreciate it. Let's go on in. Yes, sir. Thank you. Let's go on in.
When we walked into the hospital, it was full of medics and doctors and officers standing there to receive Joe and Scott.
I see my nephew there who happened to be working in Iraq. It was just an overwhelming experience.
We all stood there, we all cried, we all were moved because they gave them the hero's welcome that they deserve, that all of our troops deserve.
I got wounded April 12th of '04, operated on me right here, and I just want to thank every one of you. If I could, I'd hug you, every one of you, I tell you. You guys mean the world to me. Maybe you weren't here when I was here, but the things that you guys are doing is... You know,
Well, I was wounded 15 April, 3 days after Sergeant Bowser was, 3 years later. I was taken to the cash unit in the green zone, and they were just going to let me lay there and die. But I had an Army combat medic with me who pretty much saved my life that day. And I love the Army, Joe.
Be all you can be.
He argued with the doctors there in the green zone. Told him, you need to get him out of here, you need to get him out of here so we can make it up to Balad and get treated better. I got on a helicopter and they flew me here. And I was taken directly in there to the operation room, remember any of the support I had, but according to my parents, I had the best support that they could ask for. Thank you very much for all the support, not only to me, but to everyone that comes through here. And I just wanted to come back to walk out of here again, so, well, I didn't walk out the first time, but I wanted to come back and walk out this time on both feet. Yes, and so thank you guys. Thank you.
Like the doc told me, he says, you know, when we went to the hospital, that some of those doctors were thinking about getting out. And they say, you know, when they have somebody like me and Scott come in there that'd been wounded as bad as we were, to come back and thank them, you know, it gives them that little push to keep on going. Going back to the place where I was wounded was surreal. I was just trying to see if I could see a hole.
Joe lost his leg. He's not going to get it back. For him, going back, it's about walking, being able to walk back again.
Going back to the place where I was wounded was, you know, it was surreal. I mean, it's like almost like Twilight Zone, you know, like you're kind of walking into somebody's dream almost. All right.
And the fact that he wanted Craig and I along with him for that was really cool, because we've really gotten to know him and Scott Lilley both in such a short time.
It looks a little bit different because they have these mortar protectors up here now. You know, the PX was still there, and I could still trace my path the way I went. I was just trying to see if I could see a hole or something in the ground. I'll bet you it was right through here.
I think people want to think that Joe's going back and it's going to help him with the healing process. Joe lost his leg. He's not going to get it back. I mean, that's the reality, and he's got to deal with that every day for the rest of his life. For him, going back, it's about walking, being able to walk back again.
Mission complete, it sounds like.
Oh.
We got a great show for you tonight, put on in conjunction with an organization called Stars for Stripes. Craig Morgan and Chris Young are going to give us a wonderful show tonight.
When we were in Balad, the really, really big show that we got to do was actually in a place called Holt Stadium.
And walking through the front door, seeing your black dress hit the floor. Honey, there sure ain't nothing like you loving me all night long. And all I can think about is getting you home.
Everybody was really there to have a good time, and it just seemed like they could kind of forget about their stress.
We love the entertainers that are not afraid to come over to a war zone. It's like Bob Hope for the 21st century. Of course, they saw my shirt, Craig Morgan and Chris Young.
This is great. Thank y'all so much for letting us be here and be a part of this. This is cool.
The thing that really got me started thinking when I heard General Peter Pace say, you know, the nation's at war and America's at the mall, is that I'm sitting there drinking a beer, watching the ball game, but once I realized and saw the conditions that these guys are under, that's why I consider these guys my heroes, you know, not necessarily Scott or Joe because they were injured, but because they had the courage to sign on the dotted line. I just don't know if I'd have had that courage.
At the bonfire out in the sticks, country backwoods, homegrown hicks. Bonfire, dance a little jig, hold up your cup and take another swig.
We're always looking forward to those shows because we want them to be able to, you know, experience something, you know, from home.
At the bonfire.
Thanks for coming.
In Kuwait, then getting off the plane, you know, and I get to the bottom of the ramp and I hit the ground and somebody says, "God, come on, Pops, let's go." And I looked over and there was my son.
You know, it was touching for us to watch Joe hug him, and then he'd kind of walk away and he'd pull him, hug him again. All I could think about was my son, you know, and think, God, I'm so glad he's in college. And I asked Joe, how you gonna deal with this? And he said he won't, he don't until he comes home.
We had a few hours together, but it was really difficult to leave him. I'm proud of him, and I already miss him.
This morning, we went to the Fisher House. Welcome back. The Fisher House is a place for the families of wounded warriors.
It's a pretty neat setup for the families and all that so that they can have a little taste of home while they're here with their loved ones.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Good, and you, man?
I am doing great.
I was able to see the room where Jolene and I stayed at and visit with some of the families.
We've seen some that wasn't as fortunate as we are,
Right.
And knowing that they're taking a coffin back.
Yeah.
Everybody we meet has nothing but good thoughts, you know.
We've had a very, very good bad experience.
We've been here a month, and we have another month to go. So if it hadn't been for Fisher House, we wouldn't have been able to stay together.
It was very interesting to slowly but surely, take everything in this time around. We're at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. This is where Scott was flown in from Balad for his initial treatment.
We take wounded warriors from downrange, from Balad, and from Afghanistan.
Joe and Scott, these guys are able to come back and share their stories with some of the people who are going through some of the very same things.
It's really neat when I start talking to these guys. They kind of sit up in the bed and pay a little bit more attention. They'll be looking down at my leg.
I'm honored to be here to walk in these halls because this is personal. It's private. It's an injury,
They wanted me to talk to a couple of amputees, or one is an amputee, and he had just had his leg amputated below the knee like mine. I told him I made the US amputee hockey team, so he can get out there and skate too. He can do everything he used to do before, maybe just not wiggle his toes in that right side. We had lunch, and when I walked into the cafeteria, there was my doctor, Dr. Gajewski, which was the one that amputated my leg.
I sent him an email and I said, I'm going to be coming to Germany.
Oh, no.
And he said, well, you better come by and see me because if you don't, I'm going to cut off your other leg.
Oh,
and believe me, he can do it.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we told that.
I just want everybody to know that the military, the medical staff, thank you very much, not only from the bottom of my heart from my son, but for all of the other wounded warriors that you take care of. Thank you and God bless you.
I'd say probably the thing that made the greatest impression on me was, here we are over here to say thank you and show them that, we know what they're doing and, we appreciate it. And they're thanking us. I knew it was going to really touch me, but I didn't really know how much.
I feel this trip has given me a new life mission, and that is to applaud and lift up and support our wounded heroes. To be able to be with Scott and Joe as they return and be a witness to their desire to have closure. And I got more out of it than I ever thought of.
As a wounded warrior returning back to Iraq has definitely shown everyone else that being wounded isn't the end of the world. I think going to the medical center in Balad probably was the biggest thing that touched me.
I wanted to come back and walk out this time on both feet.
Seeing those doctors and the medical staff and seeing the sacrifices that they make, those guys could make 10 times as much money if they went out into the private sector. But after talking to some of them, ask them, why do you do this? Then they point to Scott walking down the hall and they say, that's why.
I didn't know that I would touch the people that I've touched. The guys that are still out there on the front lines. I never realized that I would make an impact on them like that. I guess it really kind of set me back, like, wow.
Every time I come over here, I think that, I've done it before, it'll be the same old hat, and it's not. Obviously, the difference is that traveling on this trip was traveling with Joe and Scott. And I think the thing that I'll take away is just, the personal experience of sharing Joe and them's personal experience. I'm taking away some friendships that otherwise I wouldn't have.
I'm from the country, all right? I can do this.
I'm the son of a third
farmer. I've been married 10 years to the farmer's daughter. We didn't screw that
No, you ain't screwing nothing up. That's great. Ready?
Yeah, I've been married 10 years to the farmer's daughter.
I think they're gonna get the gig.
God-fearing, hard-working. Okay.
I'm a God-fearing, hard-working
Combine driver.
hogging up the road. I'm up
Flower.
chug-a-lug-a-lugging.
5 miles an hour.
I'm in and out.